Spain. Country located in extreme southwestern Europe. It occupies about 85% of the Iberian Peninsula, which it shares with its smaller neighbor Portugal. Spain is a storied country of stone castles, snow-capped mountains, vast monuments, and sophisticated cities, all of which have made it a favored travel destination. The country is geographically and culturally diverse. Its heartland is the Meseta, a broad central plateau half a mile above sea level. Much of the region is traditionally given over to cattle ranching and grain production. It was in this rural setting that Miguel de Cervantes's Don Quixote tilted at the tall windmills that still dot the landscape in several places. In the country's northeast are the broad valley of the Ebro River, the mountainous region of Catalonia, and the hilly coastal plain of Valencia. To the northwest is the Cantabrian Mountains, a rugged range in which heavily forested, rain-swept valleys are interspersed with tall peaks. To the south is the citrus orchard-rich and irrigated lands of the valley of the Guadalquivir River, celebrated in the renowned lyrics of Spanish poets Federico Garcia Lorca and Antonio Machado. Over this valley rises the snow-capped Sierra Nevada. The southern portion of the country is desert, an extension of the Sahara made familiar to Americans through the spaghetti western films of the 1960s and early 70s. Lined with palm trees, rosemary bushes, and other tropical vegetation, the southeastern Mediterranean coast and the Balearic Islands enjoy a gentle climate, drawing millions of visitors and retirees, especially from northern Europe. Spain's countryside is quaint, speckled with castles, aqueducts, and ancient ruins, but its cities are resoundingly modern. The Andalusian capital of Seville, is famed for its musical culture and traditional folkways, the Catalonian capital of Barcelona for its secular architecture and maritime industry, and the national capital of Madrid for its winding streets, its museums and bookstores, and its around-the-clock lifestyle. Madrid is Spain's largest city and is also its financial and cultural center, as it has been for hundreds of years. The many and varied cultures that have gone into the making of Spain, those of the Castilians, Catalonians, Lusitanians, Galicians, Basques, Romans, Arabs, Jews, and Roma, Gypsies, among other peoples, are renowned for their varied cuisines, customs, and prolific contributions to the world's artistic heritage. The country's Roman conquerors left their language, roads, and monuments, while many of the Roman Empire's greatest rulers were Spanish, among them Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius. The Moors, who ruled over portions of Spain for nearly 800 years, left a legacy of fine architecture, lyric poetry, and science. The Roma contributed the haunting music called the cant jondo, a form of flamenco, which, wrote Garcia Lorca, comes from remote races and crosses the graveyard of the years and the fronds of parched winds. It comes from the first sob and the first kiss. Even the Vandals, Huns, and Visigoths who swept across Spain following the fall of Rome are remembered in words and monuments, which prompted Garcia Lorca to remark, "In Spain, the dead are more alive than the dead of any other country in the world." In 1492, the year the last of the Moorish rulers were expelled from Spain, ships under the command of Christopher Columbus reached America. For 300 years afterward, Spanish explorers and conquerors traveled the world, claiming huge territories for the Spanish crown, a succession of Castilian, Aragonese, Habsburg, and Bourbon rulers. For generations Spain was arguably the richest country in the world, and certainly the most far-flung. With the steady erosion of its continental and overseas empire throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, however, Spain was all but forgotten in world affairs, save for the 3 years that the ideologically charged Spanish Civil War, 1936–39, put the country at the center of the world stage, only to become ever more insular and withdrawn during the 4 decades of rule by dictator Francisco Franco. Following Franco's death in 1975, a Bourbon king, Juan Carlos, returned to the throne and established a constitutional monarchy. The country has been ruled since then by a succession of elected governments, some socialist, some conservative, but all devoted to democracy. Land. Spain is bordered to the west by Portugal, to the northeast it borders France, from which it is separated by the tiny Principality of Andorra and by the Great Wall of the Pyrenees Mountains. Spain's only other land border is in the far south with Gibraltar, an enclave that belonged to Spain until 1713, when it was ceded to Great Britain in the Treaty of Utrecht at the end of the War of the Spanish Succession. Elsewhere the country is bounded by water, by the Mediterranean Sea to the east and southeast, by the Atlantic Ocean to the northwest and southwest, and by the Bay of Biscay, an inlet of the Atlantic Ocean, to the north. The Canarias Islands, in the Atlantic Ocean off the northwestern African mainland, and the Balearic Islands, in the Mediterranean, also are parts of Spain, as are Ceuta and Melilla, two small enclaves in North Africa, northern Morocco, that Spain has ruled for centuries. Soil. There are 5 major soil types in Spain. 2 are widely distributed but of limited extent: alluvial soils, found in the major valleys and coastal plains, and poorly developed, or truncated, mountain soils. Brown forest soils are restricted to humid Galicia and Cantabria. Acidic southern brown earths, leading to restricted crop choice, are prevalent on the crystalline rocks of the western Meseta, and grey, brown, or chestnut soils have developed on the calcareous and alkaline strata of the eastern Meseta and of eastern Spain in general. Saline soils are found in the Ebro Basin and coastal lowlands. Calcretes, subsoil zonal crusts, toscas, usually of hardened calcium carbonate, are particularly well developed in the arid regions of the east, La Mancha, Almeria, Murcia, Alicante, and Valencia, as well as the Ebro and Lerida basins. Soil erosion resulting from the vegetation degradation suffered by Spain for at least the past 3,000 years has created extensive badlands, reduced soil cover, downstream alluviation, and, more recently, silting of dams and irrigation works. Particularly affected are the high areas of the Central Plateau in southern and eastern parts of Spain. Although the origins of some of the spectacular badlands of southeastern Spain, such as Guadix, may lie in climatic conditions from earlier in Quaternary time, beginning 2.6 million years ago, one of the major problems of modern Spain is the threat of desertification, i.e., the impoverishment of arid, semi-arid, and even some humid ecosystems caused by the joint impact of human activities and drought. Nearly half of Spain is moderately or severely affected, especially in the arid east, Almeria, Murcia, as well as in much of subarid Spain, the Ebro Basin. The government has adopted policies of afforestation, but some authorities believe that natural vegetation regrowth would yield more speedy and more permanent benefits. Climate. Spain is characterized by the overlap of one fundamental climatic division, between humid and semi-arid and arid zones, by another, the threefold division of the peninsula into maritime, continental, and mountain climates. This complexity results from the peninsula's size, which is large enough to generate a continental thermal regime, its location close to the Atlantic Ocean in North Africa, exposing it to both maritime and Saharan influences, and its mountainous relief, which not only produces its own climatic zones but also exaggerates local aridity through the creation of rain shadows on the mountain's leeward sides. Plant and animal life. Vegetation. Nearly half of Spain is covered by spontaneous vegetation of some sort, but only a small proportion, largely confined to the mountains, is classified as dense woodland. Northern Spain has heath and deciduous woodland, oak, beech. The mountains of the northern Meseta and the Iberian and Beatic Cordilleras carry deciduous Portuguese oak, those of the Central Pyrenees, the Iberian Ranges, and the Central Sierras have diverse pine species. The rest, more than half of Spain, has a Mediterranean vegetation characterized by evergreen oak, Quercus ilex, and other drought-resistant plants commonly reduced to scrub status, matorral. An esparto grass, Lygium spartum, is found in the steppes of La Mancha and the southeast. The esparto products of Spain, paper, rope, basketry, however, come from an associated alpha grass, Stipa tenacissima. Poplar and eucalyptus have become widespread since the 19th century. Wildlife. The proximity of Africa has given Spain more African species of wildlife than are found in the other Mediterranean peninsulas, while the Pyrenean barrier and the general extent of the country explain the number of indigenous species. The European wolf and the brown bear survive in the scarce wild areas of the northeast. The Barbary ape is possibly indigenous but is more likely an import from North Africa. It survives only under protection, at Gibraltar. The wild boar, ibex, wild goat, and red and fallow deer are more common. More than half of the bird species of Europe are found in Cotodonana National Park, at the mouth of the Guadalquivir. The Spanish imperial eagle and other large species such as the eagle owl, the buzzard, and several varieties of pheasant are native to the High Pyrenees. Desert locusts have been known to invade southern Spain from North Africa. Fish. The country's waters contain a diversity of fish and shellfish, especially in the southeast where Atlantic and Mediterranean waters mix, the Iberian Sea. Species include red mullet, mackerel, tuna, octopus, swordfish, pilchard, Sardinia pilchardus, and anchovy, Angrolis encrasicholas. Demersal, bottom-dwelling, species include hake and whiting. Striped dolphin and the long-finned whale inhabit the waters of southeastern Spain, and the bottlenose dolphin is found off the Ebro Delta. Overfishing has tended to alter the balance of species. People. Ethnic group. Spain has been invaded and inhabited by many different peoples. The peninsula was originally settled by groups from North Africa and Western Europe, including the Iberians, Celts, and Basques. Throughout antiquity it was a constant point of attraction for the civilizations of the Eastern Mediterranean. From circa 1100 BCE the Phoenicians, the Greeks, and the Carthaginians began to establish settlements and trading posts, especially on the eastern and southern coasts. These outsiders found a mosaic of peoples, collectively known as the Iberians, who did not have a single culture or even share a single language. A kingdom called Tartessus, which flourished between 800 and 550 BCE, ruled much of the valley of the Guadalquivir. Elsewhere political organization was less sophisticated, consisting of a number of city-states in the coastal regions and of clans in the interior and the northwest.